I've known Tiffany for about 9 years or so. She's been involved in helping to fight Common Core and some of the other problems in education. She's also one of the founders of this school that we're in, Liberty Hills Academy. And so she's been very involved in looking at alternatives and even going to that step of creating an alternative for other families that had needs. And that's really admirable and takes a ton of work. And you can see what they've created. And I think there's probably tours available later for the school if you want to go up and see the classrooms and stuff right above us. So Tiffany is going to talk to us today about character education as part of the moral education that all kids should have. And so please welcome Tiffany Hess.
We actually are excited to give you tours, and you can have a personal tour from a founder over here, or you can have a personal tour from a founder over there. Ileana, raise your hand. Okay. We live in a time of incredible opportunity, almost limitless, and yet it also seems that we're struggling as a society. There is a darkness that envelops the culture our children are trying to grow in. Ideas that most never thought would be acceptable are embraced. Disrespect, coarse and crass behavior, impatience, and unkindness are often seen as the norm and even expected of the young. Recognizing unhealthy trends, a Deseret News article from February 2019 is titled, "Most Public Schools Teach Everything But Morals. Is it time for a change?" There's an interesting line in this article. It says, the word moral has become a linguistic landmine in the United States, causing some schools to opt for character education instead. What is the problem with the word moral? The word moral is applicable to actions that are good or evil, virtuous or vicious, and has reference to the law of God as the standard by which character is to be determined. I believe that this is the root and essence of the problem that we face. Gordon B. Hinckley said of this, "There is an epidemic affecting the lives of millions of youth. It is a sickness that comes of a loss of values, of an abandonment of moral absolutes. The virus which has infected them comes of leaderless families, leaderless schools, leaderless communities. It comes of an attitude that says, we will not teach moral values. We will leave the determination of such to the individual. Parents in all too many cases have abdicated their responsibility to train up a child in the way he should go so that when he is old, he will not depart from it. Educators in all too many cases have adopted an attitude of moral neutrality. If we deny the one source of moral truth, then from whence will it come? The absence of teaching real morality, in the absence of teaching real morality, what are the public schools teaching about behavior? So I have an example. A few months ago, I was doing homework with my nephew who attends a local public school. The reading assignment was about dolphins. They are fun, they are beautiful, they are kind to people, and people who are supremely ungrateful are ruining their environment. What could my nephew, who is 7, by the way, do to take personal responsibility for this problem? The assignment didn't say. But I believe this type of assignment creates a stored rage, an anger pointed at human beings. What are the fruits of this kind of assignment? We are seeing them in the news as children campaign and protest over lies they've been told and science they do not understand. But their anger is real, and their ability to act on that anger will grow with them. What are the principles promoted in the public schools today? The environment is supremely important and in danger. Human beings are the problem. We must be accepting of every lifestyle that exists, no matter how inconsistent it is with human happiness or even public health. Killing the unborn is a right. If you don't believe that's a position of the public schools, check out the NEA website. It's part of their platform. The United States is one of the most oppressive states to ever exist in history. Christianity is naive and intolerant, and maybe most of all, God and belief in his law is ridiculous and offensive. Programs like computer adaptive testing, tests that no teacher, no principal, and no district employee is allowed to even look at, and social and emotional learning will see to it that our students are immersed in the false morality of secularism day in and day out. I had a parent from Centerville come and talk to me, and she reported that her third grade student was spending nearly 5 hours each day behind a screen in school. 5 hours. Doing what? Learning what? What are they looking at? What are they learning? Do parents, teachers, or administrators even know? It is difficult for parents to review online learning platforms. We are already seeing the harvest of the current education system, but it can become much worse. We have created a terrible idol for the purpose of worship, and that most dangerous idol is our own selves and our own convenience. When we worship ourselves, there will be no way to come to agreement or unity on what constitutes morality or character education. Theologian, professor, and Presbyterian minister A.A. Hodge wrote, "It is capable of exact demonstration that if every part in the state has the right of excluding from public schools whatever he does not believe to be true, then he that believes most must give way to him that believes least, and he that believes least must give way to him that believes absolutely nothing, no matter how small a minority the atheists or agnostics may be. It is self-evident that on this scheme, if consistently and persistently carried out in all parts of the country, the United States system of national popular education will be the most efficient and widespread instrument for the propagation of atheism which the world has ever seen." True? What is more concerning than what is being taught in the public schools is what is not being taught. Secular history ignores the many miracles that brought this nation about and made it great. The founding documents that protect the rights of all Americans. Secular math and science dismiss the architect of the universe and the wonder of discovering his hand in creation. Secular literature and language lack beauty and purpose and fail to engage the minds of readers, while they do nothing to build self-worth or character. So what is a solution? On a grand scale, I believe the most discussed solutions, school choice and backpack bills, are a Trojan horse. And that the real solution has to do with federalism and nullification, the idea that states can and must refuse unconstitutional federal law. To do that, we may also have to be willing to reject a little over 6% of our budget, give or take. In a recent article, James Lane Buckley wrote about the legal precedent that established the administrative state and its unconstitutional departments. A Supreme Court case, Seward Machine Co. versus Davis in 1937, Buckley writes, "The practical effect of the court's decision has been to empower Congress to induce the states into adopting Washington's approach to matters that remain the state's exclusive responsibility. These programs, which are laden with the most detailed instructions, study Common Core for 5 minutes, now provide federal subsidies for virtually every activity in which states are engaged, and have made a major contribution to the federal government's vast expansion. In the process, they distort state priorities, impose ponderous regulations on a myriad of state and local activities, and deprive their citizens of effective control over how their own taxes are to be used. In a nutshell, the programs that force us to educate our children following Washington's models and culture are unconstitutional and strictly the product of bribery. Our children are worth far more than that. What will we do? What will make our state move on nullification or something that radical and vast? I have no idea. Whatever it may be is probably going to be too late for the children that we in this room care about. And unfortunately, I have found that for many, many parents, it takes about 24 hours to go from hyperventilating over the latest educational outrage to shrugging and resignation. We cannot continue to do that with the children that we love. We must recognize the darkness they are facing. So many of them know that they are in a toxic environment. And the sad thing is, they think it's okay because their parents put them there. And that's one of the saddest parts of all. Many of them are frustrated. Many are bored out of their minds. Weren't you? Did you sit there watching the tick of the clock in far too many classes and far too often? Frequently, our students who come to Liberty Hills Academy from the public schools come with anxiety or a negative attitude about school, or both. Within weeks, we see a change. Their anxiety melts away. Small classes are not so intimidating. Math isn't so scary when you are working on the appropriate level and not just being passed along to the next thing. Because we are a faith-based school, students are not expected to leave a large part of themselves at home. Their spiritual self is welcome at school as well, and we work very hard to enrich what they learn at home and at church. And we love to see the anxiety and negativity melt away. Our students spend almost zero time behind a screen. We expect them to read and comprehend complex material and to learn how to discuss it. When students know that what they are learning is important and why it has value, we gain their consent. They participate in agency, and they will begin to engage and invest in their learning. I don't believe you can teach a child anything against their will. You can sit them in the seat, but they won't learn. I am an administrator at the school, but I also teach 2 literature classes each day. This is my favorite part of the day. I love to talk about big ideas with my students, and I love to look over the classroom and see every hand waving at me, every child with something to contribute. I love a debate in the class when the objective is truth. This is exciting stuff, and it's exciting for me too. There is an energy, and the hour flies by. There is never enough time in the day or even in the year to learn the things that we really want to learn. But in the time that we've had, we have learned how to ask questions and tackle a challenge. We have learned that the more we learn and the more we know, the more we have to contribute. We have learned how to learn from examples, both good and bad. We have studied from the best books, the best we can find, and have learned something about discernment and how to search out what is best. My friend Lorene Simper wrote, "One of the truest purposes of education is to teach that there is such a thing as superior works of art, literature, sculpture, poetry, etc., and to educate the taste and conscience to not only recognize that good, but to prefer that good. We can't expect to retain the best ideas of Western culture if we continue to allow our children to participate in a dumbed-down job training program. Even from conservatives, I often hear disturbing statements like, "I have never used algebra again in my life," or "What does Shakespeare have to do with getting a job?" There's a line in the film Monuments Men about the men and women who tried to rescue the art that was stolen from the Nazis during World War II. You can wipe out an entire generation, you can burn their homes to the ground, and somehow they'll still find their way back. But if you destroy their history, you destroy their achievements, and it's as if they never existed. That's what Hitler wants, and that's exactly what we're fighting for. But you don't have to burn the achievements of Western civilization to the ground for them to become lost. You can simply ignore them. The agenda of progressive education reform has done exactly that. It is our responsibility to pass on our culture, our history, and all the beauty and truth that has been preserved for us to the next generation. And most of all, it is critical that we pass on the principles of liberty and the understanding of our nation's founding and our founding documents that have given us liberty and prosperity. The problem here is that many of us, because we are the products of public education, did not learn those things ourselves. And so we have to be willing to take the time to learn those principles along with our own children. Joy Pullman, an education policy analyst at the Heartland Institute, addressed Common Core's misguided focus at a hearing in Wisconsin. In a self-governing nation, she said, we need citizens who can govern themselves. The ability to support oneself with meaningful work is an important part, but only a part of self-government. When a nation expands workforce training so that it crowds out the other things that rightly belong in education, we end up turning out neither good workers nor good citizens. The ancients knew that in order for men to be truly free, they must have a liberal education that includes the study of literature and history, mathematics and science, music and art. Yes, man is made for work, but he is made for so much more. Education should be about the highest things. We should study these things: stars, planets, cells, square roots, Shakespeare's Hamlet, Mozart's Requiem, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, not simply because they will get us into the right college or a particular line of work. Rather, we study these noble things because they tell us who we are, why we are here, and what our relationship is to each other as human beings and to the physical world that surrounds us. Do we at Liberty Hills expect all of our students to go on to college and be Latin professors? No, we don't. They will do all kinds of things. They're all very, very different people. Some will go into business, some will go into the trades. The possibilities for well-educated individuals are infinite. Maybe I tell them you will be a plumber. Plumbers can live very comfortably. Mine sure does. But if you are going to go into the trades, be a tradesman that has a rich inner life. Understand great literature, music, and art. Be familiar with the principles of liberty and be active in preserving that liberty. Most of all, be good at whatever you choose to do. Be expert and be honest. Be a contributing member of a marriage, a family, and a community. At Liberty Hills Academy, we use the Webster 1828 dictionary. Listen to the definition of education, and then when you go home, look it up on Google. There's a big difference. Education, the bringing up of a child, instruction, formation of manners. Education comprehends all that series of instruction and discipline which is intended to enlighten the understanding, correct the temper, and form the manners and habits of youth, and fit them for usefulness in their future stations. To give a child a good education in manners interesting, arts and science is important. To give them a religious education is indispensable, and an immense responsibility rests on parents and guardians who neglect these duties. Why is a religious or moral education indispensable? A secular education has to do with what people know. A religious education has to do with who they are and what they become. We must recognize that each person has a soul. They are completely unique. They are not the product of random chance, but a child of God of infinite worth. From that perspective, and probably from that perspective only, we can recognize the inalienable rights of ourselves as well as our neighbors. Can we expect our children to learn these principles in an environment that doesn't recognize them, let alone teach them? What can you do? The culture we live in has become something from which we must diligently shelter our children for a time until they are solidly armed with light and truth. Alexander Pope famously wrote, "Vice is a monster so frightful mean as to be hated needs but to be seen. Yet seen too often, familiar with her face, we first endure, then pity, then embrace." We have to bring our children into the light. And let me conclude by this illustration. Randall L. Ridd gave it a BYU devotional. He said, "Years ago, I planted 2 trees of the same species and the same height in my backyard. I planted one where it got just a little bit of sun daily, and I planted the other where it enjoyed full sunlight. Over the next year, I didn't notice much difference in the growth of the 2 trees, but then my wife and I left on a 3-year mission. When we returned, I was shocked by the difference. The compounding effect of a little more sun each day made a huge difference over time in the growth of the trees. The same thing happens in our lives as we expose ourselves each day to the source of light. We may not notice an immediate change, but be assured that change is happening inside and the results will be apparent in time. This simple idea of the compounding effect of daily disciplines with purpose and real intent can make a big difference in all areas of life. It can mean the difference between struggling through an ordinary life or being immensely successful and filling the measure of our creation. How much light are our children receiving in the public schools each day? And in those hours and in those years, how much light could they be receiving? What difference could it make to their happiness and the richness of their life? I believe that our children need much more light. Please help them find a way to get it.